Global Socialpreneurs is brought to you in part by Positive Talk Radio, KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle. Check them out at www.positivetalkradio.net.
Welcome to Global Socialpreneurs, a one-of-a-kind talk show showcasing expert social entrepreneurs. Learn their stories and their secrets to creating a sustainable impact. Now, here are your hosts, social entrepreneurs Ann Scotland and SHAMETRIA Gonzalez.
Hello and welcome back to your time here with us on Global Socialpreneurs. Hello, SHAMETRIA.
Hi, Ann. How are you?
I am good. You have been so busy. I just got back from Milan and you're leaving for London tomorrow. So it's been a busy time.
I know, girl, the summertime. I feel like we can catch up on here and see each other's faces.
I know. We'll have to do something in between soon. So, so again, welcome everybody to the show. Thank you for tuning in here. And we stream live on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern. 9 a.m. Pacific and 12 noon Eastern. I'm just getting my voice back, so thank you for your patience. We're here to talk about social entrepreneurship. We're here to create a more global conversation and awareness around social entrepreneurship, what it means and the impact it can have in the lives of people around us on the ground, especially grassroots organizations all around the globe, and how you can become more informed and or get involved in this. We have some absolutely incredible, amazing guests that join us each week. And today we have a great and amazing gentleman who I have seen on a couple other shows, who has been so gracious as to join us here, and who I have chatted with before. So I'm super excited to have him here. And his name is George. I'm going to do it right. George Adongo Ochieng. Hopefully that's close. And he is from Kenya, but I'll tell you just a little bit more about him. He's a social entrepreneur, a career coach and speaker. He also helps link global investors with entrepreneurs. I'm going to drink water. Sorry, guys. My bad. I will mute. If I just mute you guys, then SHAMETRIA, you talk.
Yeah. No, I know you're just getting your voice back.
I know. So, but George is a social entrepreneur. He's a career coach. He helps people with resume preparedness. He helps young people. He's a speaker. And he also helps link investors to entrepreneurs, which is such a needed help. And he has 2 degrees. He's also completing right now his 2nd master's degree in international community development with the university here in the U.S. And he lives in Nairobi, Kenya. So welcome, George.
Hi, George.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you so much, SHAMETRIA. It's a pleasure meeting both of you.
Yes.
So, George, before we jump into the social entrepreneur questions, give us just like a 1-minute summary of your life and who you are and what you're setting out to do.
Well, as I said, I'm George. A couple of things that I do, but my background has been so much grounded in supporting communities. For the longest time, I started with my prior degrees, which was my first theology degree, and then the second degree in master in biblical studies. I major in Greek, and such an amazing moment of engaging with community. And one of the most exciting moments that helped me set the pace for social entrepreneurship was when I was doing my research for the first master's thesis that was the biblical strategies of fundraising for small registered churches. And I did this in one of the informal settlements in Kibra, that is in Nairobi, Kenya. Well, beyond that, I'm married to Beatrice. We have 2 daughters. One of them just joined high school. By the grace of God, she happened to have been one of the best performers in the national exams that was last year, and joined one of the most prestigious national schools in Kenya. That also, of course, just a brief of what I said. that have been working enormously in supporting young people. I started this as early as the year 2000, and you've been able to help young people. Of course, this has been a volunteer program. And back then in the year 2005, the culmination of that program was one of the young people again in grade 8 exams that was also in the papers, just as my daughter now was last year. And then we moved to high school, where we have also helped young people graduate almost from what we call here grade C. Grade C, I think, would be the US, that is somewhere just around B or something, or B plus. And the young man has ended up being one of the senior journalists now in Kenya. And I've got a couple of others who are medical doctors in the US, in Europe, and other quarters. Wow. And fast forward, I was also able now to take on colleagues in university. So I've been able to help a couple of them. One of the colleagues was also a parent of one of my former students, also graduated with thesis, and I coached him. By the grace of God, he happened to have been the best in the university.
Wow. No, George, that's very beautiful. And I love that you do work with young children, because as myself, I was one of those children that I know the product of what happens when somebody cares for you, they see you, and it doesn't have to be your parents, but when people step up and they're able to help you in that space, it's a beautiful thing. And so Anne introduced you. So I'm going to ask you, basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about social entrepreneurship. It is for-profit social initiative, even a small one. It is a business set up to solve a particular social problem in a substantiable way. If possible, can you share with us a couple of stories of social entrepreneurs who are building for-profit initiatives in Kenya? So basically, you as an individual who is doing work that's for-profit, but you attach a social initiative to it. Can you give us a story of how you've done that, and maybe some other people that have done that in Kenya as well?
There are so many of them, given that the demographic of the youth that happen to be predominantly jobless. I'm not really saying that social entrepreneurship is for people that are necessarily jobless, but most of them, given the background of social adjustment programs, the SAPs of the 1980s, Kenya came up with an initiative of making it possible, coming up with policies that would help young people create opportunities of participating in business ventures, but particularly those that are of social entrepreneurship in nature. There are many of them, of course, several of them, but I thought of just a few or that I know personally, and many others that I could also probably mention at a later date. And I came across quite a number that I've worked with closely. And one of the teams is really, much as others are at the bottom of my heart, they're the team that supported me when I was doing my first thesis. And so when I shared with them, they were able, through the help of another colleague, to come up with an initiative, and they're called New Generational Leaders of Kenya. They are not yet on our website, but I just talked with them today, and they're planning to actually picture a website very soon. Now, let me just go a little bit, 1 minute or so, to talk about these colleagues. These colleagues come from one of the informal settlements, the largest one in Africa, that is Kibra. And I remember during the conversation with one of my class schoolmates, as well as the community leaders, when I was doing this research, they decided to empower themselves by putting some money together. And once they put this money together, people started registering with some little money, but then later on, they would also lend them 75% of your savings. As I talked with them today, they were telling me now they lend back at 90% of your savings. And on a lighter note, they were telling me they have really grown, so that I may not easily join them as a member unless I go with a good amount of money. And I talked with them. And for me, Shametria and Anne, this to me is one of the typical stories of entrepreneurship, because when I hear people that one time were living, and I've been in church myself as a pastor, and I'm still in church. And when you hear people talk about, I am poor, and digressing a bit as part of the church thinking, people often talk about Peter, James, and John that were poor and fishermen. And this man hears the message and are able to bring colleagues together. Their story has made me very excited.
So just to reiterate, basically what you're saying is they're the new generational leaders of Kenya. They came together and pooled their money together started from nothing, and then the bank matched them at 90%, and now they're growing, and they just all came together with what they had.
Yes, and then of course that is exciting. And then there's another one called Brighter World, where my wife also happened now to support the founder, who is a close friend of hers, and we're so excited about what they're doing, especially now helping communities within the informal settlements also save money. And when they save money, they are able to get a certain percentage from that and support their own businesses, and then of course pay back with some shares.
Wow. That's beautiful. And I think that's a good segment. And one of the things that I know you wanted to kind of like dig in with him was being that people know how to get money for not-for-profits. They get grants, they get hedge funds, they do crowd fundraising. These are for-profits that you're talking about. What advice do you have for-profit entrepreneurs when it comes to initiatives for them to seek funding for themselves if they're doing a social justice cause or a social cause? I'm sorry.
Well, the first one is that in most cases, and I did mention this to Anne earlier on, and I would also let you know, one of the biggest challenges facing us in Africa, and particularly in Kenya, is that people hardly buy into new ideas, otherwise called innovations like social innovation. Most of those who engage in innovation look like jokers. In fact, one of my colleagues joked about it, that when people heard about the social innovation, they almost asked him to admit himself to an hospital for the socially disconnected people, a mental or hospital for that matter, just trying to look for a softer word. Now, one of the best ways for social entrepreneurs to get funding or to seek funding actually begins with bootstrapping. And when we talk about bootstrapping, we are talking about the ability to, go to immediate friends who know you well, people who, though you may not have a website, you may not have a good profile, you may not have a proposal, but already know you as a person, because our understanding is that entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs, it begins with passion. So it begins with your family members, it begins with the friends that you know closely. But then the other one is also just like I did mention before, that it's also possible for people to join saving institutions like SACCOs. So when people save money, put together, it's possible to put money together. And the initiative here is that after a while, you can get a certain part of your savings, almost like about 70 or 90%, and that is a good way of getting funding. And the third one, just so that we have a bit brief in this, is also when people also just get to talk to other people in terms of those who are giving back to the community in social impact funding. There are corporate social responsibilities, as you mentioned. We talk about grants, we talk about many others. But I do know also that there are quite a lot of people who are committed to social impact support programs.
Wow, nice. That's fantastic. So tell us, so you called it SAPOS, right? SAPOS. Was that the name of, of one of the ways you can join a savings association?
Yes, there's savings society, so we call them the SACCOs here, savings and credit and something society. So when people save money, you are able to get money, part of it after a while. You are able to get certain people to be your guarantors. So it means that when you are joining one of those institutions, you need to be about 2 or 3, 4 people who will guarantee you to get money.
Nice.
Huh. So it's different from obviously traditional investing. It's not necessarily, you're not necessarily directly investing in the stock market, but it's similar in the sense that you get returns and possibly higher returns.
Right, you can get returns, but then the greatest thing that is making this even much better than the standard banks is that the interest rate, of course, is lower.
Wow.
So much better than bonds. Okay, that's amazing. So one thing, of course, is if you're just starting out as a grassroots social entrepreneur, pooling some of your own funds as well as those of friends and family, or reaching out to, I always say when in our mastermind for social entrepreneurs, also reaching out to people who have a passion around your subject matter, your project. You know, if you know people in your community who have a special interest in this, or have even done one speech about it, even though they don't represent an organization, looking for people and reaching out and saying, hey, would you be willing to help come in? Because it's, you know, everyone gets overwhelmed, even here, with like getting started. And I think when you go looking for the right people, you know, if you get a little bit from a lot of people, you're great. You know, it's a really great way to start. I know here we talked about recently as well for very new social entrepreneurs, crowdfunding, which is, you know, online platforms for funding. I think they can be effective if people have like an extensive contact list. They can be really effective. I think it can be more effective, and I'm just sharing this with our listeners, even more effective, and I'm probably going to share this at the next mastermind, SHAMETRIA, to target on LinkedIn, doing your research and targeting people in your interest group all around the world, by the way. It doesn't have to be just your community. I could be starting an after-school program for low-income moms who have no childcare or something, right? Like I could be doing that, but it doesn't mean I can't in my town, but it doesn't mean I can't share that with other people who are interested in that concept anywhere in the world. And that's one of the beautiful things about technology and how we've come to this new place in our world where we can communicate so easily. So that's really beautiful. So I really appreciate you sharing that, George. And then after that, possibly some sort of investing association, investing in a bank or an association. Tell us just a little bit about how you've seen, granted, you know, in Nairobi, or in Kenya, but how you've seen matching work with banks. It sounded like you had some experience in banks matching contributions.
Banks matching contributions. It may not be the very straightforward process here of bank matching. I mean contributions. But one thing that I know, of course, coming from ESG, what we call environmental, social, and governance initiatives, banks are trying as much as possible to also be part of the community. Of course, as part of the CSR, that is a possibility. So one thing that I do know is that when you know people that talk with certain banks to communicate, particularly in matters now like the green bond or the green energy, if a social entrepreneur is in that space, many banks are working towards making that a reality.
Amazing. Yes. And we see that here too. So that's really good. So, and when we talk about social entrepreneurship, as many people know, you know, for SHAMETRIA and I, we happen to be in the humanitarian sphere in social initiatives. But social initiatives also include all kinds of environmental initiatives, and a lot of social entrepreneurs are working in environmental issues specifically. And I think there's particular kinds of businesses that are very happy to help support that and put their name on it. So that's really good to know. Something you said to me when we visited a while back, George, was that especially in your country or in similar situations, it's really important for social entrepreneurs to cooperate with their local and religious authorities to be successful, especially in smaller towns or especially small groups. If that rings a bell, what might you share about that? How is it important to work with your political and religious environment to be successful? And what would you suggest, even if someone was coming in from out of the country, how would they go about doing that?
Well, most interestingly, you know, as part of social innovation, because you're talking about a social impact program, it is important to actually connect with people, because these are the ones who understand the genuine or the authentic people within the communities. And then number two, they also understand the various demographics. But beyond the demographics, they actually understand also the various institutions that are likely to step in to support people with the various needs, so that your support or your intervention is actually focused on meeting a real need in the community.
Okay, that's really good, really good and helpful. So really understanding what's going on the ground,
Right.
and interviewing the people who you're specifically trying to help. And I know we've seen, and this is more in the nonprofit sector, but we've seen a lot of people with really excellent intentions going into other countries that are not their own to try to help solve a problem. But they're coming in with their own idea, their own interpretation of the problem, as opposed to really getting on the ground and not just talking to the leadership, but talking to the individual kinds of people they want to serve. You know, maybe it's not education for some people. Maybe it's literally clean water is first. You know, like talking to the people instead of just say, well, here's a fix, but maybe there's something more urgent or more relevant that they could cooperate with. So I assume that you have had some experience. Obviously, you're also in the religious sphere. So working with helping people with social initiatives find their niche, if you will.
One of the most interesting things I remember my sharing this with you during our meeting is that one of the best models, of course, one of the models right now in social impact programs or social entrepreneurship would have to do with the principle of what is called ABCD. ABCD is asset-based community development. And ABCD is, the implication is that you do not just come up with ideas and then implement them, but rather you sit and connect with communities. And last time, and SHAMETRIA, now that you joined us today, that helped us to engage in what I've used as communities now employ in terms of developmental caucuses, and that has got to do with connecting with the three areas. And the three areas that I like using is from Bloom's taxonomy. When you're talking about the head, you're talking about the hands, you're talking about the heart. I know Bloom calls them cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. So connecting with the people in the ground, doing that approach helps you to connect with genuine, real, and authentic realities.
That's great. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's so meaningful and such good information for people to hear and really resonate with, whether you're creating something in your own community or you're taking something abroad, to really do the research. Like, idea is great, but if it doesn't solve the most urgent problem or the specific problem, then, and how does it solve, especially with, sometimes with medical and other things, like what is the most pressing need? So I love that you shared that. Thank you so much, George. And I love that you shared, again, ABCD. So if anyone wants to look that up, you can check that out. I think that's such a great acronym as well. So also, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about your work with young people, especially as a career coach, especially with young people, helping them find jobs and helping them with their interview preparedness as part of your own social entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit more about that.
This has been very fulfilling, Anne and SHAMETRIA, because I started earlier on really as an initiative. As I was working with a lot of young people within the different spaces, I realized that most of them had good ideas, but then what they were lacking is just somebody that could help them connect with the reality of the possibility of creating stories and using that creativity and, of course, ability to also articulate their issues and connect with the right people, particularly when you're dealing with cross-generational issues. We have a tendency of youth being so far removed from adults, and yet in most cases, as they say, it is these adults who are able to bankroll them. So I used my experience over the years to bridge that gap between these young people and adults. And what has come out of that is the ability to see people set up their own, businesses. One of the cases I remember so well, without mentioning their names, quite a three or so young people that I remember in the past. One of them was my neighbor where I used to live, and we walked with him and was able to put in some money or buy some clothes and resell. And the next time he came to my house, he was able to pay his rent, he was able to buy food, he was able to leave the streets where he had been working with the young people that were sociopaths. And the next one was another young lady that, together with my wife, we worked with within the church community, among others, and we were able to see her set up our own business and even supply to us clothes that she was selling.
That is beautiful. And I think for myself, as I just think about the work that you do, and I'm sorry, Anne, I think my thing cut in a little bit and out in here.
No worries. You're perfect. No, it's just perfect. Perfect timing. Go ahead.
Perfect timing. But for myself, a lot of the work that I've done has been centered around empowering others to be able to fish. They say if you teach a man how to fish, they'll eat for days. But if you get them fish, then they will be able to, eat for a day, and then you'll have to keep supplying. So I just, how is it that you're able to help them in a way that makes them actually sustain a lifestyle that they can be independent? Like, what do you think has been that thing that has been the most? Is it education? Is it getting connected to banks? Is it business? What is that thing that really gets them to the next level for you?
Well, as you rightfully put it, Shametria, one of the most interesting things is when people discover themselves. And discovering themselves, of course, again, as a student of biblical studies, discovering themselves in the sphere of Christ, the sphere of God, and understanding the purposes that God has for them. And one of those purposes is to see that God has made us unique in terms of location, unique in terms of demographics, unique in terms of provision. But then more importantly, what I celebrate for me is not even just the banks and others, but the ability to get people to celebrate their own passion and share it with other people.
So using their voice.
Yes, using their voice.
Yes. I love that. No, thank you. Thank you for that. I always try to figure out what is that thing that God wants me to do in order to really help the people. And sometimes they want to, use their voice, but they're not a speaker. And so I found that mindset, a lot of personal development, teaching principles, morality, and sometimes just asking the right questions to spark them to go and do what they need to do. It really does catapult them to a new way of thinking. And when they think different, when you can change your mind, you can change your life. And I think that, even with this show, that is why we do this. It is not easy, but me and Anne in different countries, different cities, traveling the world, she came to me with this idea, and I'm honored to be her co-host, because somebody is going to hear this and they're going to be inspired, and they're going to understand why we do this, why we choose you guys. Everything's strategic, and we don't know. And there's this like proverb. It's like a Hawaiian thing. They say it's called a pono pono, and it's when you think you know, you don't know, and when you don't know, that's when you probably know. So that's my last little tidbit to add to this, because I know we're reaching up on 30 minutes, and I wanted to make sure that you get to close out. But social entrepreneurship, this is going to be a term that is going to be out there and that we're going to drive home. This is not something we're doing just for a podcast. This is something we're doing as a lifestyle. We just get to share that lifestyle and our friends that have that lifestyle with the world. And I think it's only going to go up from here, Anne. So I'm just really excited that you brought George and that I got to meet you. And I don't really do things with the youth. So maybe you're motivating me. They need us too. I deal with women that have been trafficked, but they have children, and they're young girls, but the regulations here are so different when you deal with children versus adults. So I'd love to just, I'd love to connect with you furthermore, but do you have anything that you feel that you want to tell our listeners that has motivated you in your self-care journey of being a social entrepreneur? How do you take care of yourself? How do you do all of these amazing things and still be George?
One of them is that I must admit that what has made me really focus a lot on what I'm doing is what I would call the heartbreaks. When I wake up one morning and things are not working out. And then I realize that I can actually put something to paper, like I'm a writer. I actually recently, from the time I talked with Anne and talked with Dr. Jacqueline, and among others, I have almost now about 4 books that are in the pipeline. One of them is on career quotations, and another one is on some biblical quotations. And every time I write, I find that there is a lot of fulfillment, because I'm not just talking about issues out there. I talk about matters that challenge me, and I share them with the people. I realize that there are many people within my shoes. And so that the heart and the help that I give goes back to my original, theory of what I was saying or theorizing about the head connecting with the heart, then of course the hands.
Oh.
Wow, that is so beautiful. I love that you said writing, because I know Shametria
No
writes.
one's ever said that.
I know, I love it. And that's like so meaningful to me, because that is exactly very close to how I maintain, my own emotional health, that in nature. But yeah, writing, creating, articulating with the intent to make a difference. So it's almost as a therapeutic practice that's actually going to bring help and healing to others, which I think like that is, then it's so much more therapeutic. I know in Shametra, when you wrote your book, and you and your daughter, and so that's amazing. And yes, for both of you, the work that you're doing with, what Shametra you were doing with, and I guess it's where you draw the line with youth, as you said in the US, I assume that's at age 18, but working with young women to find their footing, to create a sustainable income and a safe environment for their families, and get jobs and have a voice, and finding what you have in your past that makes you passionate. I know, George, earlier you talked about helping young people moving into professions where they find their passion, where they're really passionate about what they're doing. And so often that has to do with our past, not always, but often, because we're working to make something better than our past was. Yeah, and then you get excited about it, and your natural energy attracts others to it, because you're being genuine, you're being sincere, your heart is fully engaged. And that's partly what I love about social entrepreneurship. I call it the new entrepreneurship. That's my goal for the world, to change that around a bit, because instead of just having a business to make money, you're learning how to have a business plan and work smart and get help, get coaching, get advice from mentors, and create a business that you're passionate about, that also is designed to use some of that income to give back to social enterprises, to environmental initiatives, which is really what we're talking about here. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, George, for being with us today. You have been so wonderful and patient, and even thank you for rescheduling, since I had no voice recently and we had to do that. So it's been wonderful. But thank you. I hope we can talk to you again. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime. And I think you have both our emails. Do you have a closing last word, Shametra?
Well, today I was just reading my Bible, and it took me to Hebrews 11, chapter 11, verse 11. And I think I actually have it right here. And this was my personal word for today, but it said, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and the convictions of things not seen." And to me, the word assurance, it made me think of insurance. And it's like, faith is like our insurance. So to all the social entrepreneurs out there that are losing hope, it's hard. They don't have faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. You hoped for it, you dreamed it, you started it, or you want to start it, you believed in it. Don't you let anybody make you give up on that dream. That's why you have faith. You keep that. And then it's also the conviction of things not seen. If you saw it already, if you knew what God had for you on the other side of all that hard work, you wouldn't even believe it. So you should be convicted to your dream. You should be convicted to saying, I'm going to help somebody. I'm going to make money, but I'm going to make my money work for me. And that money working for me is going to work for the kingdom. It's going to work for the people. It's going to work for, even for people, no offense, I'm about to be a pastor. If you're non-religion, it's going to work to make sure that your people around you, which are the people that are on this earth, I believe we're all connected. I believe that we do have something that is for everybody. Everybody needs somebody. So don't think that just because you're helping one person, that's not enough. That one person may be connected to millions. So that's my word for today, is faith is the assurance of things that you have hoped for. And it is the convictions of the things that you cannot see. So just be convicted to this. I'm convicted to helping women who have been trafficked. George, you're convicted to getting another 20 doctors placed in the United States or all around the globe, and get them graduated, and get the person that's a kid that has a shoe scrubber on the side of the street some education, and now they can sell shoes. And girl, you are unleashing us social entrepreneurs all over the world. And these shows are just going to get better and better and more views. And I mean, it's working. So that's my words for the day.
Thank you. Thank you to you all. Yes. I'm so grateful for both of you. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to make the world a better place and lead by example, not only for our own generation, but for the next generation, to do things differently, to do things better. It doesn't mean that everything that's been tried to be done for good in the past has been a failure at all. It just means that we're always setting the bar. We're always doing things better, more effective. That's modern life has been that way. And we have this opportunity to break out of the mold and meet people where they are with the needs they really have, and find sustainable ways of creating social impact, financially sustainable ways where you're not strictly dependent on government grants or, specific donations. So we're excited. Please check out George's links. They're in the notes. Please check out SHAMETRIA, and she's doing some amazing things right now with teaching speakers how to speak and share their story, turning their past into their profit and there's another P in there, their passion. Purpose.
All that.
All of that. And you can check out me at my website at AnnScotland.com and find out more about our Socialpreneur Mastermind. If you'd like to stop by as a guest, we'd love to have you. So thank you again for joining us here on Global Socialpreneurs, the show. And please join us again. We stream live every week, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 a.m. Pacific. Thank you. Be well and be kind. Bye.